Hi, my name is Tamara, and you are watching Things Even a Monkey Should Know. Hello, hello! Thank you so much for joining me again today. As you know, if you've watched some of my other videos, I'm not a professional anything except artist, but I have figured out that there are a number of things around the house, out in the yard, and on my cars that I can do myself, and often save myself time, money, and aggravation. So I hope you have saved those things now too. Well, if you've been following along the last few weeks, we've been working on reupholstering my sad, saggy set of dining room chairs, and we are doing chair number 4 specifically. And today we are applying cotton quilt batting to the cushions that we cut, or the foam that we cut last week, to turn this into a real bona fide chair cushion. So let's get started. Okay, are you ready to make our actual cushion happen? I'm so excited about this. Let's go over what we're gonna need today. Obviously, the first thing that you're gonna need is your chair with your carefully cut and shaped foam from last week. You are going to finally need the old fabric that you took off the chair, and even if it's in poor condition, you still need it because it's gonna help you make a pattern for your stuff today, and probably next week too. You may or may not need something with which to measure. I always keep these around just in case, because I need them if I don't have them. You're definitely going to need that good pair of cloth cutting scissors that you got. You're going to need a pen, a marker or a pen, something that can mark on fabric. You're going to need quilt batting. Yay! What is quilt batting? It's the stuff that whenever somebody hand makes a quilt, they put it inside of the fabric to make the quilt warm and poofy and whatever. So we want 100% cotton quilt batting. At least that's what I got. It breathes well, and it stretches nicely. It makes a very nice cushion, so I would highly recommend that. And yes, I already opened the package, so sorry. You're going to need something to attach the quilt batting to your chair. So you can use a regular manual staple gun. I cannot recommend this. I'm telling you that you can use it, but you will be very angry and your hand will be very sore whenever you're done. These actually do not have enough power to fully shoot a staple into a chair, at least not in the old chairs that I have that are made out of mahogany. So, you know, mahoganies were really hard wood, so that is very frustrating. I would highly recommend that you spend the $30 or so and go out and buy an electric staple gun. It doesn't really, the brand doesn't really matter. They seem to all be about the same. This has way more power, and all you do is just pull this little trigger and your staple goes in. And I found that in a few places I have to go back and hammer the staples in a little bit more, but for the most part, it's a one and done. It's great. Now, for either one of those staple guns, you definitely want to have staples. So I got the 1/2 inch long heavy duty staples, because you do not want light duty, because this is going to have rear end sitting in it. And the fabric will be pulling, and you want it to have enough of a bite on the chair that the fabric doesn't come out, and but not so much that your future self cannot get this job undone, say in 20 or 25 years, whenever you need to recover your chairs again. Now, if you already happen to have a pneumatic staple gun, then you should totally use it. It's really, I actually like this for what we're doing today, so this is what I will be using. Again, the electric one is perfectly fine, but if you have one of these, go for it. It works well with the cotton batting. And again, you want to have the correct staples. If you're using a pneumatic staple gun, make sure they fit your gun, and don't get anything over 1/2 inch or shorter than 1/2 inch. So just get 1/2 inch. And I know that we're all very perfect and we never put staples in the wrong place ever, but just in case we do, make sure you have a flathead screwdriver to pry those out, and a couple different options with things to grab those staples with. And if you happen to have something plastic with which to pry, just in case your staple goes in the wrong place and it's visible, then it's nice to have this so that you don't scratch your wood up on your chair. I think that's all. I think we're ready to get started. Well, the first thing that we want to do is we want to be able to make ourselves some kind of a pattern so that we know what of that quilt batting to cut out. So we're going to take our old fabric here and we're going to pretend, obviously it's not going to fit the same, we're going to pretend like we're going to use it, let's take this stuff off the corners, as our cover, which obviously we're not because it no longer fits. It's going to help us figure out what we need to cut. So what I like to do, if I can find my pin, which I already put over there, silly, I like to take my measuring tape, and you see how this fabric comes down here and it almost reaches around the bottom of this. Well, we definitely want to be able to wrap this around by at least 1 inch because we want to be able to grab it and tug on it. So I'm just going to make a note for myself that on this side of this fabric, I think I want to add 2 inches on this side. So we're throwing this away anyway, so you can write all over it. And I'm going to do the same on the other side. Oh, I didn't measure that. Normally I measure it, but I was talking, so I forgot. But 2 inches should be more than enough. It would make this fabric hang down, and then I would be able to curl it and curve it under and attach it to the chair. So I'm going to do the same thing on the other side, which you all cannot see, but it is about the same look as the side that you can see. So I'm going to make a note to add 2 inches there. On this side back here, look at this, it just looks like everything needs about 2 inches. So that's actually incredibly helpful. Since we have a little extra batting, because I ordered extra on purpose, I'm going to do 3 inches just to be sure that I don't come up short, because we can always cut fabric off, we can't add fabric back in. So the front is a little bit of a challenge because it is kind of torn up. But we should still be able to make it work. And again, I think 2 inches would do it, but that would be cutting it close. There's no reason to do that. So I'm just gonna make a note to add 3 inches over here. Now we can start working on applying this to a piece of batting and cutting out the shape. So here comes the next fun part. You want to be sure that you have enough room around all your edges to get all of your extensions in. And now if you recall, you see how weird these corners are here? I'm just basically going to bring these all the way out because we are not doing our corners the same as they were done before, because we are not attaching things the same. Nothing is the same actually, except this shape, which will help us. So I'm going to go ahead and measure 2 inches out from this side here, just so that I have an idea of about how far out this should be, and then I'm just going to make a big silly shape out from that. I mean, it's kind of a silly shape, right? But it goes with the contour of the chair. So I'm going to go ahead and make the assumption that all of it needed 2 inches. Although I did note that this width here was pretty much correct. So now I need to go 3 inches from this edge here. Going to be there. And you see this is fairly loose. This does not have to be exact because this quilt batting is fairly stretchy and forgiving. And so I've learned actually quite a lot on it. I like it. This side is 2 inches also. So before I finish with this right here, I'm gonna go ahead and measure myself 2 inches out from this edge here. And if you mismark, it's okay because you're not going to actually see this. This is purely for making the shape of your cushion. Let's go ahead. We are going to have to do a little bit of fancy cutting once we get this onto the chair because we do want to cut out the corners a little bit. Let's go ahead and add our 3 inches though. And you can definitely, if you're concerned about this, you can measure along more of the edges than I have to get your shape. In this case, the shape is going to be kind of wonky. But again, we can always remember to err on the side of getting too much fabric here because we can always cut the fabric off. However, we cannot easily add it back. So now we have our big silly shape and we're going to cut it out. Our next step is going to be to go ahead and fit this more or less to our chair. If there's anywhere that you need to make adjustments, like if you have a strange little spot like this and you know, you need to cut some tabs or anything like that, now's a good time to do that. This is pretty well fitted though. I mean, aside from the fact that I cut it large, it's pretty well fitted because I did use that piece of fabric from the old chair as my template. We want to, while we've got the chair upright, we want to go ahead and put in some staples to lead us. Now, obviously we're not going to do them all from this angle because this is a pain. It's a pain to do it this way. But we want to just do this so that we know where our fabric's supposed to go. So we're going to give it a little bit of a pull and go ahead and staple in the front. Be very careful not to get staples in your hands. Now, obviously, if you're doing something where your hands have to be close to the staple gun, you should definitely use pliers. But I'm going to go ahead and pull this tight. And I'm pulling it tight, but not so tight that the batting comes apart. That's one of the reasons, one of the many reasons that I really like quilt batting for this, is that if you pull it too tight, it lets you know because it starts to come apart. And that's really actually incredibly helpful because that means your cushion is going to be pulled too tight. So we have one in the back. And of course, you did make sure that your foam was situated correctly on your chair, right? Of course you did. I forgot to mention that before I started stapling. See how we're starting to get a nice curve right here, even though I'm just, you know, pulling on it with my hand. I haven't put near all the staples in, but it's already starting to get a really nice form. So I'm just doing one staple in the middle of each side. I know where my fabric goes and I can flip this chair upside down and finish my job. Now before I flip this, I do want to point out that part of the reason, in addition to keeping this in place where it should be, part of the reason that we went ahead and did one staple on each side is to make sure that we have any wrinkles in this smoothed out too, because once it's upside down, I can't see if it's wrinkled, but I am very confident it's not because the quilt batting sticks to the foam, and if you get the wrinkles out, then you're good. So I will tell you that I really like going in a circle to make my staples. I do one here, then one here, then one here, then one here. And I just repeat this around and around. I start going to the left first and then I do the right second. And so far, it's turned out pretty well. Make sure you get your staples in the wood. I would just like to stop and point out that every time I'm doing this, you see how I'm pulling it tight, I'm pulling the batting tight, just to make sure, and again, I got the idea of how tight it's supposed to be from the middle pieces that I pulled. So I'm pulling everything to the same tightness. And also, I'm going to be stopping, I'm so sorry that this side is so awkward to do. I'm going to be stopping just a little bit from the corner on each side because I need to have room to work on the corners, and that's something we'll get to in just a minute. So I stopped just short of all the corners because every corner presents a little bit different of a challenge. So first, let's attack this weirdness right here. So we have this right here. Now obviously we cannot fold these under and do these like a traditional corner. So we're gonna see if we have any slack here. We have just a tiny bit. So I just folded that under, and then I'm going to go ahead and I'm gonna staple it right here. Even though these are 1/2-inch staples and I know they won't go all the way through, you should still definitely keep your fingers out of the way. We're going to go ahead and do 2 staples just to keep that nice and straight right there. And so now that we have this placed, once we turn our chair back over, we can finish stapling out to this corner. So I'm going to do the same thing in this other corner over here. It looks like it has just a tiny bit of slack right there. We're going to go ahead and pull it tight. See how we've got these nice curves on this since we've been pulling our batting tight with all of our staples? So now, see that little wrinkle? That's going to go away once I finish out that corner. So now we get to this other side, which is another weird side. And since this is the batting, we are just going to fold this under. You can definitely cut it if you like, but I found that in the long run, it's nicer, it makes a nicer edge if you fold the batting under and staple it. So I'm going to go ahead and staple these edges now. Make sure you stay on the wood. Depending on how your chair is made, the wood on mine stops right here, obviously, and then the foam starts there. Now we get to these corners, which are a totally different animal from the other corners. And I played with a bunch of different ways of folding the corners before I decided on a way that I really liked. So I'm going to show you my way. Obviously, there are plenty of ways to do this, but this is how I like them. I'm going to take this excess fabric that's coming from this side, basically it's wrapping around the edge of the cushion this way, and I may have to cut this. I mean, I'm definitely gonna have to cut it at some point, but I don't really wish to cut it right now. I'm pulling this fabric here, and this, we're gonna repeat this whenever we do the actual fabric covering. I'm pulling this fabric here tight and around to the front of the chair so that it's a tight edge. I'm just gonna put a little staple to hold it. And then, since I've got a nice diagonal angle under there, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm going to pull this down and tight, keeping it in line with the rest of my cushion here. And I'm going to staple it. And now we have that corner. So obviously we can't finish this corner because this doesn't move up under the chair. So we are going to go ahead and cut this up beside this leg right now. And now, see, we'll be able to finish that corner. And in addition to this, we want to go ahead and we want to staple this edge right here above where the leg of the chair is going to be showing, just for a little added oomph to that corner. So we also have the same issue right here, that we cannot finish out this corner here because it is a whole piece and you can't tuck it. So we're going to cut our slit up the side of the leg. Okay, and obviously this is all just excess fabric, so we can either wait till later to cut this excess off, or we can go ahead and do it now. I'm going to go ahead and do it now. And it doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to be above the sight line on this leg. So this is where the finished part of the chair ends, and there's my batting, so there is just a little bit of hang off there. Okay. And now we should, well, look at that. We don't need all of that extra either, even though it would be hidden. So we're just going to take that off too. So now we can actually finish out that corner. And I'm going to go ahead and just give it a couple of extra little staples here, just to make sure that it does not think about moving around. So then we're going to go ahead, and I actually like doing the back part before I move to that corner front part, because I can correct more sins from what happens in the back with that fold in the front. ready to flip our chair back over and finish stapling the corners to get rid of any remaining wrinkles. I think I might put maybe another staple up here, but see how nice the shape is of our cushion now. No wrinkles, we're tight. It all looks excellent. So we definitely wanted to flip this over and double check our work before we do this final step, because we are cutting off all of this excess silly fabric right here, which isn't actually that much. But if you cut this all off and then you turned it over and found out that you made a mistake, then you don't have a whole lot to work with to fix it. So this is why we want to be sure that everything looks lovely before we start cutting all of this off. So just cut it to the edges of the underside of your chair. It doesn't have to be perfect. Nobody's going to see it in the end. We only are seeing it right now. There is one more thing that I wish to point out to y'all before we conclude this section. You see how you can still see my staples here? Make sure that your staples don't sink down below the surface of your chair. They should be pretty well flush with it, because if they sink below the surface, they're just gonna blast a hole right through your fabric and you won't have a good hold. So you do some tests before you do the actual stapling. In this case, I have my pneumatic staple gun set on as gentle of a push of the staples as it'll go, so as shallow as possible, and I also have the air compressor set at the lowest possible PSI that this staple gun can use. How exciting! We have successfully completed another step on our way to making our old chairs look new. I'm so happy about this. And this step was really cool because we formed our cushion. So it looked like we had sharp corners from the foam that we cut last week, but we actually don't, because that batting curves them down, smooths them out, makes everything look professional and neat. Yay! We did such a good job today. Thank you so much for joining me again. If you haven't subscribed to the channel already, please go ahead and do that now. Share it with your friends. And I look forward to seeing you again next week when we are actually going to be putting on fabric. See you soon.